Hi, welcome to my video series, Does the Bible Tell You So? I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I am very interested in what people do with what they find in the Bible. I'm not interested in trying to teach you or tell you what to think or believe. I'm very interested in us being as honest as we can be about what's going on in these scriptures first, and then figuring out what to do with them. My game is not that of trying to make the Bible say what I want it to say. Okay? So today's topic is homosexuality. What does the Bible say about homosexuality? And before you just kind of launch into, oh, she's going to talk about Leviticus 18 and 20 and Romans 1:26 and 20, nope, I'm actually not going to do that today. I am going to talk about those next week. So what's the story, right? Let's start by defining a term, shall we? Homosexuality. What is the definition? Well, it's having a sexual desire for and attraction to people of your same sex. That's homosexuality. We're talking about humans who have particular desires and attractions. So here's the thing, when people tend to talk about homosexuality in the Bible, they tend to go to the sex acts passages that talk about sex between two men. And show me one that's about between two women. Anyway, but when you're talking about homosexuality, you're talking about more than just sex, right? You're talking about human beings. So what I want to do today, I want to talk about the four passages that I think talk a little bit, or at least tangentially or on the periphery of, what we're talking about when we refer to someone who is a homosexual and some of the things that go on in their lives, some of what is happening for people. Homosexuality is not just sex. All right, so let's jump in. There are four passages. I'm pretty sure many of you, or if not all of you, have heard of the two about David and Jonathan and Ruth and Naomi. So let me just touch on those briefly. The reason I think Jonathan and David play into this is because of the language that's used to talk about Jonathan and his desire and his love. He loved David as his own soul. And Jonathan's soul was bound to the soul of David. That doesn't mean they had sex, folks. That's saying something about Jonathan and his feelings for, his desire for David. Okay, that is something in and of itself. The fact that David took advantage of that and used it, I think that is very real, and that also happens for people, right? I remember having a male student talk about when you read the David and Jonathan story, he's like, oh, that's me and every crush I ever had on a straight guy, right? Okay. Ruth and Naomi, why do I think that is about, at least says something about this realm of homosexuality? Because the language that's used to talk about Ruth and her connection to Naomi, it doesn't mean that they were having sex. It doesn't mean that. What it means is it's speaking to something, right? Ruth clung to Naomi. This is a very rare verb in the Hebrew Bible, and it's the same verb that is used to talk about when a man leaves his parents and clings to his woman, and the two are one flesh, okay? I'm not trying to establish anything off of this. I'm trying to point out to you that the language there is pretty intimate, and it is worth noting that countless couples have had the next two verses in the book of Ruth read at their wedding ceremonies. The commitment, the feeling, the relationship there. That's what I'm trying to highlight here. I'm not trying to say the two of them were having sex, okay? Talking about human beings. The other two to point out, and I'm already almost at 5 minutes, so I'm going to go over, but the other two to point out are scary for me, just to be honest, because they were really unsettling for me initially to hear about. So I'm just going to throw them out there. This is food for thought, okay? This one is worth your considering in terms of Paul. And it's in the letter of Philemon. And there's a way of reading the letter of Philemon if you're not thinking about this in terms of the Christian church and the Christian faith and all of those things. If you can take a step back and pay attention to the language, it's fairly manipulative, but there's also a really interesting thread going on there. That's all I'm going to say for now, because this is supposed to be food for thought, okay? The fourth one that was most radical for me, so putting that out there, and remember this is food for thought, is what we see in the Gospel of John and the description, the language that's used to talk about the beloved disciple. So just hear me out, okay? Jesus and the beloved disciple have a unique relationship in the Gospel of John. Jesus is only said to love other people in the Gospel of John. He loves all of his followers. He loves, I think I might say he loves God. He loves Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Says he loves Lazarus for sure. And he loves one of his disciples in particular. And that's the one labeled the beloved disciple in John. And what happens in the Christian church, at least, is a lot of people are taught to see themselves in the role of the beloved disciple because Jesus loves this disciple. And so Jesus loves all of his followers, so that's how we connect with it. I understand that move, but here's what that does, is it misses or it skips over what is likely happening there in John's gospel, which is that it was written for a Greek audience. If you look into these kinds of things about the Gospels, it's impossible to miss that there was a Greek audience in mind. The opening verses make it absolutely clear. I have a video about that if you want to see it. But Greek audiences, Greek men in particular, had lover-beloved relationships. And so someone depicts Jesus having a lover-beloved relationship in the Gospel of John. That will make it have appeal for Greek audiences. Does that mean that Jesus had sex with a man? Actually, it doesn't mean that. It means that someone found it a powerful paradigm to use to talk about Jesus. That's what that means. So this element of talking about homosexuality actually taps into this bigger realm of having a better understanding of what the Gospels or any of the scriptures are actually trying to do, were actually trying to do originally in their own contexts. What does the Bible say about homosexuality? It has a few little eruptions that talk about humans who have a sexual desire for or attraction to someone of the same sex. And in none of those cases are those people being judged. Food for thought. Next week, I'm going to talk about some of the Sex Act passages. What do those tell us about the ancient world? What do we do with it today? See you next time.